In this insider-exclusive Justice in America Network TV special, our news team visits with Rafaelina Duval and her attorney, Shawn McMillan, in Orange County, California, to go behind the headlines to see how Shawn successfully represented Rafaelina to get justice for her against the L.A. County Department of Children and Family Services when they falsely accused her of intentionally starving her son, Ryan, and seized him on November 3rd, 2009. In a stunning blow to Los Angeles County, the jury found that the DCFS social workers intentionally and willfully seized her child without a warrant and did so with malice. Additionally, the jury found that the county DCFS had an official custom and/or practice of seizing children from their parents without a warrant and failed to enact an official policy or procedure when it should have done so. Here's Rafaelina to share her personal nightmare ordeal on national TV.
November 3rd, 2009 was the worst day of my life because that's the day when I lost my son. Whatever their agenda was, it isn't worth what you have done to us. You who are supposed to care and protect children. Was it worth what you did to us? What I would say to any parents who find themselves in this situation is, 1, do what is right for your children, first and foremost. 2, when you're with your children, love them. Be there, be present. And 3, find the support to get your kids back. There's a way to do it, and it requires hard work. It's not easy, but it can be done.
Shawn will also explain what you should do and should not do if Child Protective Services social workers come to your door with false accusations, what your rights are as a parent, and what your rights are when fighting departments of child family services. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Orange County, California. It's my great pleasure to introduce Shawn McMillan to the show. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We do a lot of shows, they're based on real life legal cases, and oftentimes the lawyers that represent clients started new in the beginning. They wanted to be a lawyer right from the get-go. You're a little bit different, aren't you? You were in the computer industry for
15 years.
So how did you make the transition to the legal world?
We had a customer come in one day, said he was going to law school, and my dad, I was actually not even there. I was off on my honeymoon with my wife. We'd gotten married several months prior, and we were off on our honeymoon. I got a call from my dad, and he said that Kit, that was the customer's name, was going to law school, wanted to know if I wanted to go. And he said he thought I should. It's my dad. I generally listen to what he says. So I said, yeah, sign me up. And I came back from my honeymoon and went to law school.
Right. And I think for the first few years, you were handling a lot of business litigation, but that has also migrated to helping folks dealing with the equivalent of Department of Family Service social workers in their cases, correct?
The way that happened is my background was in business. So obviously a natural segue when I'm going into law is to do the sort of work that I did before. So I did a very vibrant business practice. I figured out early on that I enjoyed doing trial work, so I started doing trials for small firms, solo practitioners, people that would do the workup on a case but really didn't like to do the trial work.
Tell our audience a little bit about Rafaelina Duval.
Rafaelina Duval is an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. She's been in the United States most of her life, since her teens. She's educated here, she's an accountant, and she's a mother. And like most of my clients, she's a good person, and she was wronged horribly.
What happened that her son was taken, Ryan, I think his name was, right? He was taken away by the Department of Family Services when he was 15 months old. Right. Why? Why did that happen?
They accused her of intentionally and willfully failing and refusing to feed her son, causing him to fail to thrive. Those were the specific allegations that were attested to under penalty of perjury by the social workers. What really happened there is there's a dispute between her and the father's dad about custody. That's how these things always.
Right, and a lot of the problems that happened here was because of the biological father, right?
Right.
He was making accusations, accusing her of not taking care of their son.
Right.
I'm just kind of curious when I was reading, was he paying child support during that time?
No, in fact.
Okay, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Making accusations, but not willing to take care of the kid.
Right. In fact, when Rafaelina started requesting child support, that's when everything blew up. So, go figure.
So her child was taken away.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened? Because it's a long journey. It's still going on, isn't it?
It's still going on. She still doesn't have her child back today. Her child was taken away. She went through, months and months of juvenile court process to try to get her child back, and she lost.
Where is her child today?
Today, I believe he's in Texas. The father obtained a move-away order, and he's in Texas.
So living with the biological father.
Yeah.
Share with us some of your strategies, because you ended up winning this case against the Department of Family Services, and I think you got a verdict of what, $3.1 million. What was that money for? Okay, and number two, what were the issues that you had to deal with, the challenges you had to do to win this case?
This was a really, really challenging case. There were financial issues we had to deal with. There were some personality conflicts or clashes between me and Ms. Duval that we had to overcome, and we did that. And there were issues between me and the other attorneys that I had to deal with. There were evidentiary issues we had to deal with. This was a tough case, and there were legal issues we had to deal with. Ultimately, at trial, the judge actually, in what's called a motion for directed verdict, that's after all the evidence is in, he decides, the jury gets to decide this or not. A large part of our case, the deception part of our case, the judge cut out on his own. And there was a lot of legal argument there. We were slated up to appeal his decision. I think we would prevail there, because now it's very clear with the...
So you've settled the case right now, but you still have another case. There is still another case going on to get custody of her child. Are you involved with that case?
Only on the sidelines. We don't do family law. We're very specialized what we do now. I only sue social workers and government social services agencies. That's it.
Does she have visitation rights?
She does.
She does.
She does.
But she has to go to Texas.
Yeah.
She lives here in California.
Right. She's moving.
How did this case change the way the department operated?
Very, very similar to my prior cases. Once the county takes a hit, I call it pain compliance. Nobody wants to comply with law until
we call it pain. Uncle. Say uncle, right?
Right. Nobody wants to comply with law until you bring pain. This was a very painful case for them. It cost them a tremendous amount of money to defend it. And
this is taxpayer money. Taxpayer money.
Yeah, but there's a taxpayer born every minute.
Well, fortunately, we have Rafaelina with us today, so let's bring her on.
Let's do it.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Rafaelina Duval to the show. Welcome to the show, Rafaelina.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You use the nickname Lena, right?
I do.
Do you mind if I call you that?
No, not at all.
Thank you for being here. I know you have gone through a horrible experience, and you still are suffering custody issues, and we can talk about that later. But tell our audience a little bit about you and your son, Ryan.
When I found out I was pregnant, it changed my life. Having then my son, it was by far the best experience in my life, because it gave me a sense of purpose and And being a mom was, to this day, the most fulfilling role and job I've ever had.
When is the last time you saw your son?
2.5 weeks ago.
Okay, so he's in Texas right now,
Correct.
right? So you have to fly down there,
Yes.
okay, to visit him. And you have full visitation rights or what?
I am on monitored visitation, and I get to see him once a month for a weekend, 6 hours.
You
each
can
day.
communicate with him on the phone all the time? At any time? No.
I communicate with him every Tuesdays and Thursdays for half an hour only.
On the telephone?
Skype.
Skype. Is that supervised by any chance?
Yes.
How old is he now?
He's 10 years old.
10 years old. So you have been basically away from him for most of his life.
Yes.
Yeah. That must be very traumatic for you.
Very.
Tell our audience what it's like to be a mom and not being able to have your child and to be falsely accused on top of all that.
It's hard not to get emotional about it.
Sure.
I have missed most of my son's life, the most important moments in his life, from the first time he went to school or when he started walking. I was not there. I have had a lot of help in learning how to deal with that, but that is nothing less than devastating. Devastating at different levels as a person, as a woman, as a mom. And what is worst of all is the stigma it puts on the relationship with my son. The fact that...
What does he think about all this? He's 10 now, right?
There has been several conversations where he asked if it is true that he does not live with me because I starve him, using those words.
Yeah.
He asked when are the monitors going to go. He asked if I love him, if I will abandon him. And he also asked, can I eat with you?
Yeah.
So those are conversations that I try to help him navigate.
What is the status? I understand you live in Southern California right now.
Yes.
I understand you're relocating to Texas.
Correct.
What's the status of the other case that's still pending regarding custody?
In May, my son was allowed to move to Texas, and I was given still supervised visitation, and I was allowed to do reunification therapy, which I have been going through that process.
Well, what is that? Is that put on by the government? Reunification therapy?
Through the courts,
They
custody.
have some psychologists out there, therapists, and they said, okay, you may be living with your son, so we're going to train you how to go through that, right? It's like coming back from a POW camp, and re-entering society. How long do these therapy sessions go on?
50 minutes each.
For how long? How many weeks?
It's up to the therapist's discretion.
Do you pay for this?
I do.
And does the therapist at one point in time write an approval, yes, this person can be reunited with their son?
Yes.
Has that happened yet?
Hopefully Monday, but I'm waiting to hear.
The control of your life is taken out of your hands and it's put into government or other people.
Absolutely. It's scary.
You seem like such a nice person to be so wrongfully accused, and this really all came about as a result of the biological father of your child, right?
Yes,
Have you ever had any discussions with him in the last 10 years?
I have.
Yeah. And does he say enough is enough, or I want to hurt you more, or what? What happens there?
I believe that that's complex because sometimes when someone's not ready to take responsibility for themselves, it's easy to place the blame, find a target to place the blame on. And
you're the target.
I'm the target.
Okay, when you move to Texas, will your visitation rights change for the better?
I will fight for that.
You will fight for that?
Absolutely.
So even if you live in Texas, right now you would only be able to visit with your son.
Once a month and Skype 2 times a week.
Okay, and when are they going to have a resolution on this?
We could have had several resolutions, but it seems that the court chooses not to resolve this case.
Why, do you think?
That's a very good question.
What's your gut feeling?
Bias towards me? I mean,
Bias towards you because why?
I just won a huge case in Los Angeles. And along the
They want
way.
to punish you?
Yes.
Serious?
Yes.
It was a tough case. There were many hurdles, some of them political.
You know, totally unbelievable. And it's a shame, you know, that the government doesn't have people who have a heart, right? Who see things objectively, right? You know, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I know it's difficult for you. I hope your custody situation improves.
Thank you.
It will over time, you know. Maybe your son will be of age, you know, when he's 18 years old, we can determine what, you know, what's what, you know. But thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
A lot of people watch these shows, and when the issue is relevant to them, like they're having a problem with their equivalent of Department of Family Services, what advice do you have to them?
Be cooperative.
Be cooperative.
Yeah, be cooperative. Remember, these people that are out investigating,
They have a lot of power.
they have a lot of power, and they typically do not take well to any kind of pushback.
So when they come to a door of a house, and sometimes they come unannounced, correct?
Frequently, most of the time.
Okay, should you let them in?
It depends on the allegations. It depends on.
Well, how are you going to find out about the allegations if they're at the door? You've opened it. We're from the Department of Family Services. What do you want?
How can I help you? What is it you need from me?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you, well, we got these allegations.
And they will tell you at the door.
They should. If they don't, you got to make a judgment call at that point in time. If they're coming at you aggressively and they're not responding to, you know, your entreaties, your request for information, then you have to make a judgment call. Am I willing to let these people in, consent to them coming into my home, my private life, and doing whatever they're doing in here, or am I going to stand up right here?
Yeah, before they come to a house, sometimes they must do an investigation in the neighborhood, like go to neighbors, right?
They're supposed to. I can tell you this. I've deposed hundreds of social workers. They typically don't do the type of investigation you would think they would do.
Is there any point in time when you invite them in the house, okay, that you should maybe stop answering questions? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, I would say when they start getting accusatory.
Accusatory.
So if their questions, you know, take a turn where it's sounding like they're accusing you or your spouse of doing something to your kids.
What should you say?
I would just stop it, say, look, you know what? We need to stop right here. I need to get a hold of an attorney. I need to know what my rights are.
Right. And what are their rights? What are their rights?
It's just like the police. This is something that's odd to me that the social workers don't get, and typically people don't get, is that you have the same rights as you would if you're being interrogated by a police officer for committing a crime. All right. Even though the dependency process is civil in nature, the same fundamental rights are at stake. You're potentially going to lose your family. That's a liberty interest that's protected. All the protections that come into play, the warrant requirements, the 14th Amendment due process requirements, all those come into play in the context that we're talking about here.
What if the social worker wants to interview your kids?
That's an emerging area of law right now. If you have siblings, say there's accusations about one but not the other, in my view, under the current law, you are permitted to refuse to allow the social workers to interview the child as to whom there are no allegations. Because that's an investigatory interview, potentially looking to pin something on somebody. It falls under the rubric of the 4th Amendment, 14th Amendment due process.
Immediately after a visit from the Department of Family Services, would you recommend anybody contact an attorney?
Absolutely everybody.
Can you record? Can you say to the social worker, I'd like to record this?
It depends whether you're doing it legally or unlawful.
Well, you're asking for their permission.
Yeah, and if they deny you permission,
Can they deny you permission?
according to them, they can. We haven't litigated this issue yet. What I tell clients in California is a two-party state. What I tell them here is, look, it's only a misdemeanor. I have never seen a county prosecute anybody.
To record someone without their permission?
It's only a misdemeanor.
Or to record somebody if they don't give you permission, but you're still recording it anyway?
Right. That's just a misdemeanor. I've never seen anybody prosecuted for that in California. Secondarily, there is a line of law that suggests that you are permitted to record a public official in the disposition of their official duties.
Really?
Meaning, social worker, public official, in here investigating, you have an argument that you have a right to record her or him.
You must get a lot of calls from people in similar circumstances.
Hundreds.
Hundreds of calls. How do you select the cases that you eventually end up taking?
I talk to them, and I try to figure out, number one, whether or not I believe them, and whether or not, I feel like they have what it's going to take to make it all the way through.
It's going to be a long journey.
It's going to be a long journey. It's going to be a costly journey, both financially and emotionally, for everybody involved. And they have to be somebody I can get along with, because it's almost like choosing a spouse. We're going to be together for 10 years, 8 years, sometimes longer. My average case lasts between 8 and 9 years. We're going to be together a long time. We have to be able to get along.
Thank you for being on the show.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.